Sometimes in life things aren't sunny though, and we know it with relationships. We've been talking a lot recently here on the show, psychologically speaking, with our good friend Dr. John Braccio about divorce. And yeah, there's a lot of negatives that go on. I mean, there's no one's denying that, but there can be, depending on the situation, some positives too coming from splitting up. Let's talk to him more about that today. By the way, the podcast is always going to be at drjohnb.com. Welcome in, sir. Welcome to a new month, and welcome to unofficial summer. Good morning.
Well, good morning to you, Dave. And I think that we have to acknowledge that there are times that divorce is the right choice. You know, we've often talked about the importance of staying together in marriages, and much has been written appropriately about the negative outcomes of divorce. With that said, though, the negative effects of dysfunctional marriages can also be such that divorce is the right choice for all involved and actually can lead to everyone actually leading a better life, including the children. I think that when we look at this, we have to say the following reasons are really when divorce is the right choice. The first three are so horrible they need to end in divorce. And I'll mention those specifically first: sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. But once we get beyond kind of the trio, we'll say, of things that are just utterly unacceptable, that we then come to other areas that are very acceptable, but unacceptable, but can be reduced by working together as a team in terms of, call it family counseling, call it working with a priest, a minister, working. But these would be endless arguing. They would be infidelity, substance abuse, severe lack of commitment, severe lack of common goals for now and the future, long-term neglect of the marriage, severe differences in parenting styles, chart-changing spiritual outlooks, long-term family conflicts, and chronic monetary conflicts, including gambling. Those are all reasons that marriages really, it's the right choice if those become at a severe level, particularly the first three that I had mentioned that really are just absolutely what will end any relationship, or need to anyway.
When you have people come in for counseling with you, do you start listening to them? Is your first inclination to try to help them, save a marriage, or do you listen to some and they start checking some boxes, and Doc, you just know it's not happening. It's not going to be saved, and now you try to guide them in a different direction as smoothly as you possibly can. Does it occur quickly, or does it take a while for you to come to that conclusion when you're working with clients?
Well, two things. One, I always start from the philosophy, and I indicate this, that the goal is to try to save a marriage. That's even before I know the facts, okay? But once I'm involved and I find out that there's sexual abuse, that there's physical abuse, that there's really severe emotional abuse, once I gather that type of information and sort it out, it's rather clear that those are really horrible things, and they really can destroy children, they can destroy spouses, they clearly destroy the marriage. Now, if it's a question of like endless arguing or infidelity or other areas of lack of commitment, those are horrible things. Don't hear me wrong, in a marriage, but they are things that can be, and I've worked with people that can overcome them. Now, but if you're dealing with people that really don't want to change, or they'll say, I'm going to be with whoever I want, and you better just accept it, or you see that the kids are really going through a lot of anxiety, depression, social withdrawal, separation anxiety from a parent. Once you start seeing these kinds of things, then you do have to take a look at divorce and say that I don't push it or anything, but when the people are saying, and I see really severe things happening to them and to children, or vice versa, whoever is really horribly impacting, then divorce is something to take a look at, and it can be best for all concerned. There are just some people that can't get along, and they constantly are at each other's throat. I don't mean necessarily physically, but I do have another rule that I will give to a couple. If there has been something physical or threatened, I'll make the point, you really can't be together tonight or any night if there's the possibility of violence. And when a person says, and this is a kind of a thing that I've seen that violent people will say, Dave, they'll say, well, there are no guarantees in life. And I say, well, I haven't hit my wife in 46 years. I'm not anticipating starting that activity. But if you can't guarantee it, that you're not going to, then there's a real risk here that something is going to happen, because you'll find that if people may say things, but they're really not going to, hit somebody, that type thing, really get into violence, if you will. But I often find the violent persons are those that will say, well, there are no guarantees, or if you heard that mouth, Dr. Braccio, quack, 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 it would really drive you. Say, well, those are things that you can't have.
No, you're right, and you have to err on the side of caution there. You cannot,
yes,
I know you've heard people say, well, he would never actually do it. He says it, but he wouldn't. You have to assume the person means what they say until proven otherwise. And if someone says, well, I can't guarantee it, so you're telling me it's an option? It's not acceptable. You're right.
You're right, acceptable. And I think that's something very, very important. And so those are the kind of things that over the years that I encounter. And I'll give you another one. When you change outlooks, okay, let's say two people marry and they're both geared to whatever it might be. They want to just live in the country and they want a peaceful life there, but all of a sudden one of them gears up and decides, gets a particular type of educational level, wants to move to a larger community, wants to have a different house, run around with different people. I'm not approving, I'm just saying when this happens and there's no way to stop it, then you clearly can have two people that are just in totally different directions and will just be arguing, fighting, or ignoring. That's another thing that can happen. Financial, you get into financial conflicts. You can have people that will actually just quit a job, even forgetting the impact on the family. Just say, hey, I didn't like that, so I quit it. We'll have to get by, and not realizing the impact that can have on life, on lifestyle, on what they're going to do. And then I'm including gambling here, too, because gambling, I've worked sadly with a number of relationships over the years, not frequent, but every now and then, that gambling will destroy a relationship because a person cannot stop from spending the family's income on gambling, always waiting for the next hit, the next success, not realizing that one successful hit will lead to wanting it more and more and more. It's chasing the hit more than it is
and the house
seeking the financial security.
Yeah,
those
the house
big casinos are not set up for you to win.
Would you say, Doc, that if people, though, are communicating and the communication is still there, maybe even it's robust and it's not overly negative, that either a marriage can be saved on one hand or a divorce can be clean on the other? If it's got to happen and they're communicating well, then it can be done with, I guess I would say, the minimal, which is still bad, but a minimal of angst.
Yes, the answer is yes, Dave. If people are willing to communicate and sort things out, often you can save even what looks like a very bad marriage, okay? That is really true.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if two people have just grown fully apart, but they don't really hate each other, they just have gone in different directions. One wants to live up in the hills, and one wants to live in downtown Metro Detroit. Okay, let's say it's really not that simple. Let's just say we run into something like that, and it's just irreconcilable. It can't change, but they get along.
You say that you're right. I know a couple that kind of pushed the envelope when they finally sold their friends of ours their suburban home. One wanted to live the urban lifestyle in downtown Seattle. I don't know why, but where we're all from. And the other wanted to be over on the coast. And the compromise, they did compromise, but I wondered where it was going to go, that they would live 1 year in the city and they would rent and live the very urban lifestyle they always wanted to try. And then they would go do the other. And that's what they ended up doing. And they're still together. But I thought, this is not going to go well because one person is not an urbanite, not at all. So 40 years of marriage, though, at that point.
Well,
so it's tricky. That's tricky.
The thing I find interesting, my mother actually said something when I was a young kid, used to say at various times, and it still sticks in my mind. She made the comment that marriages that look so secure and happy would actually surprisingly end, and those that you couldn't imagine staying together, they were able to survive whatever it might be. Now that would be an example of that. But I think if people are willing to work on things, then often they don't get to the point where you have terrible arguments and real demeaning type statements going on and the things that destroy relationships. But on the other hand, your point is good. If people can communicate, then even if the marriage ends and that bodes well for the children, bodes well for them, bodes well for the future with whoever they interact with, if they're able to do that. But it's pretty hard to do, but if that can be done, then sure, that would be the best of all worlds in the what I still would call the sad situation of a divorce where marriage doesn't work out.
Sometimes divorce is the right choice. It's been part of a series here that you can find all of them on divorce, various angles, because it's more than a 10-minute subject, clearly. But the podcast will all be at drjohnb.com. And it's always good to talk to you, my friend. We start a new month. We enjoy the summertime, and hopefully we'll get a chance to get together again and chat. I know it'll be next week. We'll chat again, and it's always good to have you on. Take care. Stay safe. All right, Doc?
Same to you, my friend, as we now enter the most beautiful, most enjoyable times for most people during the summer, unless you're a big skier or something. But these are great times.
Yeah, I know. Well, you can be a water skier and enjoy that too. Okay. Hit the slalom the other way.